Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys had a great week. Hope everything's going well. This morning we want to jump into the Word. Before we do, I want to talk about, share a little testimony from India, real quick. Don't forget to keep praying for our missionaries. Even though we're, our small body, we're impacting the world by partnering with missionaries all over the world. So in India with Rajan, and Rajan's got about 8 or 10 pastors that he works with under him in the northeast section. So continue to keep praying for him. The gospel is doing great things there, as well as John a little further south. And of course, we've got the Arringtons who have been in with us this past week. Keep praying for them. As God continues to move with them in Wales. Keep praying for Jacob Rose in Honduras. We'll be traveling down there in late May, as well as keep praying for Pastor Joey in Cuba. So real quick, in India, I read these. It's better just to read these out because they're a lot more fun to read. It says, miraculously God healed brother Malika. From time to time, he's vomiting and emitting blood, and from last 1 year, he was bedridden. He says, but they prayed, and the miracle came, and now their 2 families have been added to the Lord. This is just a village out in the middle of the bush, jungle area. Also, he had another one. This is up in northern India. One girl was possessed by an evil spirit, and God delivered her. She used to run here and there, but when they brought her into the meeting, she was delivered by the Lord, and the Lord healed her, and now she's whole, and her family has joined the church and continues to walk. So here's one from John. John said, Esther, his wife, they had a lady in their prayer group that couldn't have children. So they began to pray, and it says it was impossible for her to have kids. Then they prayed for her. She conceived, and so she gave birth, and everybody was healthy. So I guess at the end of the day, we have to continue to think about how impactful it is, as we continue to partner with people around the world, and we get to share part of their testimony. As we're sending resources over there monthly to support them. Just remember, we're a part of something much bigger than just this little postage stamp here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Now also, even locally, Daniel Fisher, I was going to share testimony here about him. He's been dealing with some kind of, mucus stuff for the last year or so. That just, every couple hours he just coughs something up, which is kind of a weird thing because he's a really healthy guy. And so he went to the doctor. The doctor said, we can't see anything really, but we need to schedule an MRI. We were in first service a couple weeks ago, and he had Scott Thigpen pray for him, and it didn't immediately happen. And so that Sunday he's going for sure, I got healing now. And he said, but he'd been keeping up with how often it happened daily, and so it was still there. And then the kind of week progressed on, and he was supposed to, the doctor called him about the MRI, said, how are things going? And Daniel thought for a second, well, I don't know that I even thought about it recently, but things are a little better. And so about 1 week after he had been prayed for, Daniel realized that all of a sudden, it just wasn't there. And so I guess as I start this morning out, we're going to talk today about how our words matter, how it matters about how our hearts think and how our hearts shape the world around us, how our hearts create a worldview, and how they engage the kingdom of God. And so that, all over the world, it doesn't matter if you're in Cuba, which Pastor Joey's been sharing testimony from there, of people coming to Christ, and also those being delivered and healed in India and even here in our city. It doesn't matter. The word of the Lord is always working, and it's always active. And what we store up in our heart, we need to shape that from that worldview. So today, turn to Daniel chapter 3. and we're going to jump in right there. But I just want to encourage us in those testimonies because God is doing great things. And some of you in Gather Group right now might have testimonies of what God has touched this week or what He's moved out of the way with you, what the Spirit has done. And later in the group, you may want to share, what God has been doing. Don't forget that the Lord's always working and doing something. We have to have the worldview that invites Him into it. Okay, Daniel chapter 3. I'm going to talk about today about how our words shape maybe how they shape our worldview, but also how they impact, how what we store up in here impacts the things around us and that they're available to be used when we release those words. So, in other words, if you go with me to the beach, if we go out on the south end of Fort Fisher, when we get there, we might decide to cook something. So if we decide to cook something, I'll open up one drawer, pull out a cook stove, and then we can cook. You might want coffee, so I'll pull out a little French press with a jet boil on it, and we might have coffee. You might go like, I need to wash my hands. On the other side, I have baby wipes on that side. You may say, well, I want to, it's too hot. I want to sit in the shade. So we'll pull the awning out off the side of the truck and we'll cover up the area to be shaded. I want something to drink, or you reach in the cooler and there'll be something in the cooler. All this to say is that I have packed and prepared the vehicle to be for the day, and so that whenever I need something, it's already been prepared for and packed. And so it's there. So it's been thought through, and I've thought through it and continue to think through it and add to it. So it's prepared when it's needed. And so for us, I want us to think about what is it that we're storing in our hearts? What do we store in our hearts so that when the opportunity is there, that we're prepared and it's able to come out and to be useful to us? So what are we storing in our heart? Because the things that we store in our heart shape how we see the world, and it shapes how we feel about the world. The peace that we carry, what we put here shapes everything out around us. And it literally, what we cultivate within inside us creates the environments around us as we walk around. So today out of Daniel 3, I want you to take a look. We're going to take a look at this and see what happened here with Nebuchadnezzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and just to understand what was happening there, because this is a pretty amazing story. So let's jump in. Daniel 3. Now Israel's in captivity, and they're literally behind enemy lines, like they've been taken captive. Daniel, first part of Daniel, he comes in and he is one of him and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're one of the 4 Jews. They were considered wise counselors. They were considered special to the king, and even though they were captives, and so Daniel early on had given the interpretation of a dream, actually given him the dream and given him the interpretation of it, and so that Nebuchadnezzar began to realize that the God of heaven, the God of the Jews, was the Almighty God, because just for that one thing where he said, if you go back in Daniel 1 and 2, Daniel is charged to tell a dream from Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar said he brought all of his satraps and all of his magicians and the Chaldeans, everybody that would have any ability to understand in the supernatural, brought them together and then basically said, hey, I'm not even going to tell you my dream. Since you are able to understand what's in the unseen world, I want you to tell me my dream and then give me my interpretation. Otherwise, the sword is going to your throat. And so it goes out through the land, and the only person who's able to do this is Daniel. And Daniel comes up and says, oh, king, here's the dream and here's the interpretation. And so when he gives that, it all of a sudden shifts Nebuchadnezzar's understanding of who the true God is. And so part of that is as we're going to move into 3 and see this about Nebuchadnezzar and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is that we're going to be stuck in places that feel like we're behind enemy lines. We're going to be stuck in places that feel like we're like the only person there, or we're the only few people there. And what we've stored up in our hearts, even the circumstances of our life, what we've stored up here has to be able to come out and move something. See, Daniel never forgot who he was. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego never forgot who they were in the midst of everything. So let's read the story, because this is important, especially, it's always important, but especially in our day and age, in our culture, whenever the secular worldview continues to even shape, even comes against the biblical worldview of how things are and how things are understood. Daniel 3, in the New King James Version, so verses chapter 3, verses 1 through 7, basically, I'll summarize this for you. Nebuchadnezzar said, hey, I'll make a decree that you have to bow down and worship me. You have to worship this big gold statue that I put up of me. And at the sound of the music, he had all his governors and everybody pulled together. He says, you have to worship when you hear this. So we start in verse 8. And so what happens is the music plays, and he has all his officials and satraps and everybody's around, all the head people around, and it plays, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they do not bow the knee, and they stand up, and they say, whoever does not will be thrown into a fiery furnace. So basically, they are faced in the culture of that day is, you're going to bow and worship our God, or you're going to be thrown into the furnace. And now, they had stored up in their heart, we're not worshiping another God. We're only worshiping Yahweh. Just one chapter earlier, Nebuchadnezzar had been encountered by the fact that Daniel served Yahweh, and and Nebuchadnezzar understood that was the God of all gods. And so these three decided, we're not going to bow our knee in worship to this. We're going to trust that God is who he says he is, and then when we use our words, that he's going to meet our needs. So, verse 8, chapter 3. Therefore, at that time, a certain Chaldeans came forward to accuse the Jews. They spoke, it said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, the psaltery, in symphony, with all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the gold image. Now, what's the big deal? Go ahead, guys, listen. Just fall down, and they won't throw you in the furnace. Now, there's something deep within them. They're going like, we're not going to compromise in this decision point. We're not compromising. We're not going to bow down and worship. If you'll remember back in Exodus 32, when Moses goes up to the mountain for the tablets, for the Ten Commandments, he comes back down and he finds Israel worshiping a gold calf. And what happened, they took that gold, they'd taken it out of Egypt, brought it out, and then when Moses didn't come back, they said, make us a God that we can worship, something that we can see. And they made a gold cow and they walked around and worshiped it. Moses comes down and says, hey, burn that thing, grind it up, put it in the water and drink it. And so, at this point, these three are going, hey, listen, we understand our past history, and we know that the Lord says, do not worship anything other than me. And so this is deep in their heart. Like they've stored this thing up within them. And so verse 11, so whoever does not fall down in worship shall be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews who you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. And Nebuchadnezzar in rage and fury, gave a command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, so that they brought the men before the king. And so the king says, saying to them, "Is it true that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the God or the gold image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready at the time to hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music, and will fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands?" That's verse 15. Now, you have to picture this. I need you to picture it in your normal day life. That's a pretty stark thing. This is, they're like in a hostile land. And they've been taken captive, but they've also been given, because of their God, they've been given leadership over particular areas. And so that's why they're in this group. And so this group is supposed to, as leaders, we're supposed to represent the king, and so they're supposed to worship the gods and the golden images and idols that he worships. And these three are unwilling to do that. And now they're standing before the king, the one who has the ability to kill them in the moment, standing before them saying, "We will not do this." And so this is kind of a pretty drastic illustration, but I want us to think about it in our normal daily lives. Like, what is it that we've stored up that we have such a conviction on that it begins to override any other decision in our life? Are we convicted that the Word says that we're righteous and that we've been given this abundance of grace? Are we convicted to the point that that's who we are, and therefore we continue to live our life out of that place? Because what we store up in here is what comes out here. It's what we begin to see things by. So right here, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were not moved by this decree. I mean, honestly, it's amazing to me. Before a foreign leader, and they're living in this land, and they go, "We are not going to fall down and worship." Look at verse 6. Now let's go down to verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that's the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up." And so they're using these words, like they've stored these beliefs and these words up, and they're going like, "We're not going to do this." Now, what this does is when we begin to use our words of faith, they're attached to a belief. Excuse me, they're attached to what the scriptures are. When we begin to use those, there are angels around that are waiting for us to continue to use and walk in faith. Go to Psalm 103, verse 20. Psalm 103, verse 20. It says, "Bless the Lord, all you his angels who excel in strength, who do his word, heeding the voice of his word." So it means that the things we store up in our heart that we continue to use, it's not like these three said, "Listen, this is what we say. Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace." This is what they declared. In faith, they said, they're not fearful. They clearly just state, our God is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we'll still not serve your God. So there's a conviction that's like so deep within them about, and they've stored this thing up within them that's so deep that they're not being moved. So go on to 19. Nebuchadnezzar is full of fury, and expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he spoke and commanded that they heat the fire first up 7 times more than usually heated. And he commanded that certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind the 3 up and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their garments, and they were cast into the midst of the burning fire furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in. So think about that. There was a loss of life from his own army because it was so hot that when he threw them in, that those men were killed. Verse 23, and then these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Verse 24, then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he arose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound in the midst of the fire? And they answered, true, O king. Look, he answered, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Now, if you read further down, it says they came out, they didn't smell like smoke, and they were they were fine. Excuse me. And they declared that Nebuchadnezzar again declares that God is the God of the Jews, is the the God of the universe, the God above all gods. And so today, what I wanted to encourage us in today is, what are the words that we're storing up? Like in my truck, I'm stored and prepared for any situation or circumstance, just, whenever I go out. So personally, do we have something stored up within us? Do we have something stored that has a response for the circumstances and situations that we enter into? What are we storing in here? Are we storing up past experiences where things haven't worked so well? Are we storing up our past experiences of our life? Or are we storing up what the Word says about who we are? And are we storing up about even the testimonies that we've heard, so that we begin to draw on things in faith, and we begin to stand in places to where we look different than the world around us. We look different than the worldview, the secular view of the world around us. Because we won't actually succumb to the music per se of the day. I'm not talking about the music. I'm not talking about regular music. I'm talking about the belief systems, the narratives that are out throughout our cultures today that we bow to without considering what they're attached to. And so today what I want us to do is think about this. Think about what you've been storing up in your heart. Think about what's there. And maybe think about the things that that we have stored up, that we're ready to actually be able to be released in a moment and a time. God still is who He is. From here, from Daniel, all the way back here in the mid-6, this is about 650 or so BC. He's still the same from here, from the very beginning in Genesis all the way to today, right now. From the fact that He touches a lady in India so that she may have another child, from the fact that she touches a young lady who needs to be delivered and that she is delivered, from the fact that He touches a gentleman that has been omitting blood for so long, and then he's touched after a year, and he's healed. The things that we store up in our heart, the beliefs that we have, they will not only demonstrate our worldview, but they will also begin to create the testimony that people can look at and go, oh, that's the God of the universe. Even Nebuchadnezzar, with all of his understandings from his satraps and all those were over here, even he declared that God was who he was. So today I want to maybe in group today is maybe talk about what have you stored up in your heart, or how do we store things up in our heart, or what's one thing we need to store up that prepares us, or maybe even what's one thing in our culture that comes up against, that we're challenged by, that we need to have a response to. Remember last week we talked about love and how we love. And so even in that love from last week, we were talking about even in that love that we're so greatly loved and that we love others in truth and love, there's still a response from our heart that will always give a picture of what heaven is and always give a picture of where our belief is seated at. And we give a picture of where our faith is at. And our words will either bring life or our words will either bring death. Okay, discuss this. And remember, next week we've got First Sunday, so don't miss that. We'll be First Sunday and we'll be, I think, Third Sunday, which is Easter. So get your calendar square for April and see you next week.